Hermann Wolfgang Zahn was a German neurologist and writer. He was born in Durkheim in 1879, the son of District Court Chief Judge August Zahn. After the early death of his mother during childbirth, he was living with his grandparents in Edenkoben and Lahr. He attended the gymnasium in Landau in der Pfalz. After a year of voluntary military service, he began to study medicine in München, becoming a doctor in 1905. He studied hypnosis and was a doctor in Berlin's Grunwald Sanatorium. He died in 1956 in Baden-Baden. Zahn published his first poetry in 1903. He was friends with other literates, such as Alfred Kubin or A. R. Meyer, who published some of his work. He was also a close friend of Paul Scherbart. Sadly, Zahn is one of those authors whose work is praised by various genre biographers, but which isn't being published, and whose original editions are impossible to get a hold of, or cost vast sums of money. That goes for his fantastic novels Das Walmüller Haus and Ich suche Mona, the latter of which was only reprinted once in the 90 years since it came out, in a new edition of 22 copies. Of his collections, the only one available to read is his 1907 Gestalten Hinter Mir, or The Shapes Pursue Me, the story of one night as poet Marcel Ferrier pacing nervously in his apartment in the Latin Quarter of Paris. So he decides to have some opium. When he does, he sees a tiny man in a green suit, who keeps grinning at him in anticipation, when a mysterious hand delivers him a letter late at night. The letter was written by his friend Alfred, telling him to go visit him in the morgue. Alfred can't go to sleep until he tells Marcel how his paranoia of being pursued by a terrible laughing fiend he could never see led him to drink himself senseless and then stab his own wife to death. The sensogram has Professor Giordano appear before a vast scientific assembly, showing them the severed head of serial murderer Zingraf. The professor was able to keep the severed head alive, the same way he had done for the 20 severed gorilla heads he has in his bedroom. Recording Zingraf's thoughts, the man has no idea they cut off his head, but he seems to be able to speak even without having the necessary organs. Then, as the professor is attending the severed head, Zingraf's mother walks into the room, making the dead man cry. Everyone takes a break to make it less awkward, but when they come back, they find the professor on the floor, his assistant smiling idiotically, and the dead murderer having an evil grin on his face. 1 second's fright has Paul Schluter run away from an angry mob, who were angry because he struck a man down for no reason, due to his paranoia. You see, Paul keeps running into a man he used to bully at school, despite the fact he's dead. So that makes him lash out a bit. He finds asylum in the house of a man who has a tail, and who climbs up a rope and disappears in a hole in the ceiling, to bring him into a room with hundreds of knives on the wall and dozens of wax heads, which his host stabs to offer him some wine. It ends up being a dream, sadly enough. Judge Not has a man murder his beloved, supposedly to save her from pain, and then, despite being imprisoned in an asylum, he vows to make himself a rope to escape and bring his beloved's daughter to her now eternally young mother's side. The mystery of Chipswick has a lord visit a famous doctor, because of a simple enough reason. He had fallen in love with a dancer, but was also affianced to another woman. Then, after getting a letter which doesn't exist, he kinda sorta murdered the dancer and her unborn child, and before the doctor can do anything, the man kills himself on his couch.